So, hello everyone. My name is Katie from PFC. Thank you for joining us today for another segment of An Audience with Pa, with our special guest today, one of the best Canadian soccer players of all time, Patrice Bernier. As you know, February is Black History Month, and a part of Black History Month, we are highlighting prominent Black athletes in Canada. So there will be a Q&A at the end of our session. So make sure you submit your questions down below. There is a little Q&A tab. That's where you can submit them to us for the guys to answer them for you. So now I would like to introduce to you head coach of PFC, Pa-Modou Kah, and Canadian soccer legend, professional footballer, Patrice Bernier.
Thank you very much, Katie. Welcome to a Canadian legend and also MLS legend, Patrice, who I was fortunate enough to play against in my time in Norway. And we didn't actually get to play in MLS, did we? Or play against each other? No?
I think, did we? I think so. I don't remember.
Sure.
Most likely, because I came in 2012, so I think you were still.
Yeah, I came in 13. That's right.
So I think we.
I mean, it is a great pleasure to have you here, Patrice. You know, you're one of Canadians' soccer legend, and also somebody that I've represented Montreal, his hometown. You know, very well off and on the field. So for me, it's great to be able to be sitting down here with you, talk about your journey as not only as a player but also as a man and the things that you stand for. Given that your descent is from Haiti. So
Yes.
maybe it's nice. So maybe it's nice just to talk about that a little bit, from being from Haiti to Canada, you know, and build it up out there.
Yeah. Thanks for the invite. It's always a pleasure, and I know there's a lot of stuff happening now, and of course,
Yeah.
I'm happy to be chatting with Pa and being part of I think CPL, and I know some of the people who are behind Pacific FC. So
Yeah.
it's great to see Canadian soccer grow and progress. Look, I was born and raised in Montreal, so it starts from there. But my father, as you mentioned, I'm a Haitian background, and my father came here in the early '70s. Actually, he came here as it's the snowstorm of the century. So his first day coming from the Caribbean's first day in Montreal is not white sand, if you could say,
Yeah.
and a very for a Caribbean person, it was a clash of climate, clash of culture, and everything, and all that in one day. But my father stuck around, and so by the late '70s, me and my sisters came around, and so I grew up in Montreal. I grew up in this Canadian country where hockey is the number one sport, but had to fend my way. I did play both sports, but my passion was with the soccer world. And what connected me to the soccer world even more is because Canada only went to one World Cup, and it was in 1986, and I was able to see it. And so that latched me to the great World Cup scene, and also knowing that as a young Canadian at the time, I could actually say Canada was at the World Cup, so maybe one day I could be at the World Cup. So, growing in Montreal wasn't easy because, the Montreal Canadiens are the number one sports team.
Yeah.
So all you hear about is hockey. But soccer is a global game. And when you come out of Canada, all you hear most of the time is about soccer. So it was great to grow up in terms of the Canadian culture, but having a passion from soccer that came from my father, because in Caribbeans and Haiti, soccer is the number one sport, and he grew up loving Pelé.
Like a player like yourself, you've been captain for Montreal. You've been captain for the national team, and 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 being a black player in these circumstances, what drove you? Like, I know you're somebody that speak a lot for our people, what we've gone through, right? Because as we know as well, there were slaves in Haiti, and all these places in the Caribbean. They also came there, North America. Can you touch up a little bit like yourself when you say you grew up in Montreal, where there's a different type of race that you can see, and then for somebody that is maybe grown in Saskatoon, let's say, it's not it's not that diverse. Can you touch upon that also? How that helped you as a youth, growing knowing that you have certain type of people around you?
Yeah, look, the reality is, even though I practiced both sports and hockey, there was not many black players at the time. And in soccer, I was growing up in a world where there was only like 30,000 players playing in the area in the whole province of Quebec at the time. So soccer was not big. So I played with my, of course, with the stories my father told me, and then I was put into that. And in Montreal, on the scene, to grow up as a young black kid, of course, like I said, my father told me about Pele. So, and when you look at the soccer world and you identify a lot of times to somebody who resembles you and
Yeah,
also demonstrates excellence, because we all look at models that are either our parents, first and
yeah,
foremost, and then after that you look at people who do quite well in other sport in their domain and their disciplines. And I grew up learning about Pele, so I identify to wanting to be kind of like Pele. And in Montreal was not that easy because yes, the professional soccer scene was not very big, and like as I mentioned, hockey is was the predominant sport, but not many people of our color in the game. And so there was a lot of racist moments growing up in the game in the hockey part. So it kind of can't say eased my way into soccer, where soccer I could identify because there was a lot more black athletes, and even at the time in the 80s, there was a lot of players that are even in the national team that were black players. I grew up learning about Alex Bumbury, Carl
yeah,
Valentine, I think is from the West,
yeah.
from the BC.
Right.
So
Yeah,
those are guys that the name, and then you know they play for Canada. So you start saying, okay, there was a lot of other players. So in Montreal, the reality was trying to find your place. Also being Haitian, you know the story about Haiti. It's the first independent black country outside of, if
yeah.
you take Africa. And so when you learn the heritage, you're proud, but at the same time you see how Haiti is. You know the struggles that they have.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there was that part to you know, you have that pride, the Haitian pride, where you come, where you realize the story about slaves freeing themselves and making the country now whole, Toussaint
Yeah.
Louverture and Jacques Dessalines. So those are stories that I grew up, meaning that you know they paved the way, and so you keep that inside, so to pave your own way, which my way was being a soccer player in a hockey world. And even though I was actually playing soccer myself, hockey myself, you know, the as I mentioned, the hockey route was
Different.
uh, I won't say difficult in terms of playing, but you it was difficult to
Culture.
identify to people like me in it because
Yeah,
there was
because
not
it was
that
not
many.
many. Because it was not many. Because it's right. It's like, and that's sometimes that I was that also I tell people that like because of the culture, because of you grew like myself, I grew up in Norway. So Norway is a country with winter sport, right?
Yes.
So the only times that you will get to play football is when you're around people like that are maybe from Africa or from Asia, North Africa, because you all live in the same area. So you kind of
Yes.
tend to gravitate towards those people. But also, what I want people to understand is like we moved to another country, so we were trying to find our place in a new society, and then but you see that the society is not designed especially for you. Could you tell us like in which early age you were feeling like, well, hold on, I'm being looked at differently, and like even though I'm in a country, like what's going on here is why I'm being looked at differently. Did you have those moments with you growing up? Because I did have it when I was in Norway.
I know, because in Norway, not many black people do cross country skiing. That's for sure. Having lived there, I
Oh
know
man.
that's the predominantly sport, and you can identify to it. And also,
Yeah.
Norway wasn't. I know. I remember there. There's a lot more ethnicity now, but it was not that
Yeah.
many as I was there.
Man,
So
can you remember the first time I saw you play? I'm like, who is this black guy playing? What was that? Where did he come from? I swear, one thing you
yeah,
told me when
because
I
of
was
course
growing.
everybody's like, oh,
Oh my
you can
God.
really identify the players who are foreigners and of color.
Yeah.
So it was, but yeah, good times in Norway. But yeah, in terms of being in Canada, like you said, I grew up in a hockey country. Uh, my father came here. The Montreal Canadiens were winning Stanley Cups, so you automatically jump into the culture. You learn
Mhm,
about that sport.
mhm.
So when I was a young kid, I was hyperactive. So they put me in football because I had so much energy.
Yeah.
They needed to put me somewhere so that I could focus. So they put me in football and soccer because that's what they knew. And then they put me in hockey in the winter. And then as I played hockey, it was great because you were developing the sport. But then when you're a kid, kids don't really tend to see color until
Exactly.
it's presented to them by either
Hmm.
adults that kind of say things or show things or talk about things, and then they start realizing there's differences. And when I was around
Hmm.
10, 11, 12 years old, that's where the first moments in hockey arise, where now people were paying attention to not how I could be, how I skated or how I was good on the puck. It was mostly because I was of another color and I didn't fit in that sport
Exactly. Yeah,
because
you
there
didn't
wasn't
fit in the
any.
mold that they wanted you to fit in.
Yeah, exactly. And so I kept going, and I was lucky because I had a coach who was half black, half white. So, and he had
Hmm.
lived through through some intimidation, racism when he was younger, and so he guided me to not be irritated, frustrated because I didn't
Yeah.
understand why are they picking on me and saying things about my color when I'm just trying to be like everybody else and play my sport. And slowly playing soccer, I was connected to more ethnicity because
Yeah.
now I was seeing a lot more people that look like me or from different backgrounds: Italians, Greeks, Haitians,
Everywhere.
Jamaicans, Trinidadians. And in Montreal, there's a big diversity, but I was seeing it much
Yeah.
more in soccer than I was in hockey.
Then in other
And
sports.
so,
Yeah.
as much as I kept going in hockey because I was doing well, but it was difficult. I was slowly
Yeah.
detaching
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I
It's always
didn't see
difficult. Yeah.
myself in that sport. While I saw myself
Mhm.
in football, because when you look at football
Because
in
of the
general,
global reach. Yeah.
yeah, you
When
see
you look at the
people
global reach of football, and it's like
exactly.
the poor man's sport. Like it's not for a rich man. Like soccer is for everybody. Like, but we touched up on it a little bit, and you looked up to other black people that was playing for the national team. How was it for you then to grow up in a time where you could be a voice for the younger generation? Because you had Atiba Hudson, you have Julian de Guzman, you had the Rosario, you had other black players that were predominant, also doing well at the time. You guys came together. How did it feel knowing that you guys were representing a country not by birth but country that you migrated to, and but you made it yours? Like for you, Canada is home. You share both. Did you felt that they allowed like you were represented? Like did they allow you to feel represented while you were in the system?
Yeah, look, like you mentioned, all those names, Atiba, there's even Ali Jerba, Dwayne De Rosario. We kept meeting each other, even though we're not the same age, but we kept meeting each other at national team camps.
Hmm.
Uh, and then we realized that, guys are from Scarborough or Toronto, uh, even from BC. I know Chris Clark, Jeff Clark,
Yeah.
players that are of color, but I met in the national team. So easily at the national team, you realize you saw yourself a bit more in Canada with the national team because there was different background people,
Yeah.
Italians, people from the Caribbeans, if you could say white players or English speaking players,
Hmm.
Anglophones that coming countries. So at the national team level, you always realize that it was easier to connect with the players because we came from backgrounds, and then of course youth national teams, the guys from Toronto, because there wasn't as many guys from Quebec. I identified with them quickly because we were all from the Caribbeans. So even though some are from Jamaica or Trinidad or and I'm from Haiti, there's similarities. So at the end of the day, you kind of tend to make fun of certain things, or you realize, hey, we do the same thing in my household, and so it made it simpler. And at the end, after that, when we came to play for Canada, we knew we were representing Canada, representing ourselves. But for those guys in Toronto, they were representing, Scarborough, the areas they were from, and I was representing coming from Montreal, and to show that we have a skill set and we're good, and also we can represent the whole country, and that we are if you can say, we are a representation of what Canada is. Because there's a lot of if you look at Canada now or even back then, Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, the bigger cities, there's a lot of ethnicity, and it is what Canada is, and I would say always been. So I always felt that I was Canadian, but I didn't. We all always knew also that we had to showcase ourselves to show the young players that we are good professionals, and we can pave a way for them to believe that they can make one day a difference playing soccer, and not just being known as a hockey country that we could be. And now you have Alfonso Davies, who's now a great representative of Canada, and also black players, but just Canadian soccer in general.
Mhm. I mean, for me, it's some of the subjects that also that we touch on is like for people to understand that, like, the difference between black and white, like, because that's what it is now. Because we're asking for equality, but what we're trying to make people understand that we don't want to be put in a box that people believe in. That's the only box we belong, right? So we're trying to let people understand that you put it in a box for so long that we're more than what that is. Seeing like yourself, who is the part of the technical staff in Montreal, with you, Andre, and Wilfred, but also to see what MLS has done with the Black Lives Matter movement, the athletes that have done it. How proud are you to see the movement that has been made by the Black athletes, not only in America, but in Canada as well? When you watch the CPL and you see that we took a stand, like for you as a Black man, because you've also posted it, and I've seen like some of the posts, you posted the Black captains that have represented the teams. A lot of people might not understand it, but for me, it was a proud moment to see. It is a proud moment. Can you explain to the people why you exactly made those posts and what it meant for you seeing the Black Lives Matter movement?
Yeah, because you mentioned it. I guess you always need models, and you have to showcase that. Yeah, there are good models, and that was the post for me. Was I realized I had been captain, but I never took the time to say, oh, maybe other players of color I may have, but I never paid attention to it, because you do the coin toss, you don't realize, hey, And so I had made a kind of a check to see how many captains of teams who have been given the leadership role were Black players. And then where you realize, yes, there was Thierry Henry. Yes, I was in Montreal, but then you realize DeMarcus Beasley, you realize Kendall Watson, and when he was you was Dwayne De Rosario, I think even in DC and in Toronto. Jonathan Menza is now in Columbus. And I think those are things to say, hey, look, they're not just good players, but they also, their clubs, their teams, their coaches have given them the leadership role to be the face, to be the person who represents the club and the players, and that is a great step. It's something that I think I haven't never really. It's something that was mentioned to me when I was in Montreal, that in all sports there not have been that many Black captains in hockey, or American football, or soccer, or other sports. And I didn't really pay attention because, of course, like you said, we don't want to be put in a box. You want to be judged for your character, your qualities. You don't want to be judged by your color of skin. You want to say that people say Patrice Bernier. good person, good player, bad player. You don't want them to say, oh, good black player.
Yeah.
Uh, and those are things that funny because in hockey, I used to get comments where, hey, you're pretty good for a black player. So it was a compliment, but at the same time, bring you down because saying that we're not that good.
Exactly.
And so it was important. It's great to see that there's these movements. And I don't know for you, but the fact is, when I was a kid, when you had sometimes moments of racial profiling, you always felt like you shouldn't talk about it because you don't want to be looked as a victim.
Exactly.
And you don't want it to say, ah, yeah, he's complaining, but it's not the truth. This didn't really happen or so. And at the end of the day, if we don't say it, people don't realize how often it happens. And a lot of people thought, hey, no, Patrice Bernier, I don't know if for you, Pa, but no, you can't be stopped because your personality. Oh, yes, actually, it did
Oh yeah,
happen.
exactly.
But
No,
not
bro.
everybody knows who you are, and somebody stops you because you fit the profile. And so I'm happy
Exactly.
for MLS for what they have
But
done
this,
because we need to put in the forefront that there are people out there in the front office too, not just on the field. And some people want to coach that are doing good things, and sometimes we don't realize. And to finish it off, I think it sends a message to other people,
yeah,
kids, saying, "Hey, okay, we're not just good at this, we're good at all these other things. We are everywhere.
yeah,
We are good in many different departments and not just being an athlete because a lot of times we're characterized because a black player can be athletic
exactly.
and but can be a good coach. And it's great to see when in the staff being with Thierry, Wilfred, and Kwame, we are
Mhm.
four black coaches. We don't mention it, but at the end of the day, you
No.
realize, hey, our staff is predominantly black.
Mhm.
It means that the club has given us confidence in our qualities,
Mhm.
and that yeah, for others there is a model, and you could say you can be more than just an athlete. You can be a coach, you can be an administrator, or anything you want to be.
Yeah. No, no, you're right. And to your point, it's the same, and that's the part that some people don't understand. It's like you mentioned it, like because we are people that are known, people think that we cannot be stopped. But that's the thing that we try to tell people, and I try to tell people. I'm like, when you talk about white privilege, that is the little bit of the privilege that is given to me being athlete. Maybe from your standpoint, because you think, oh, because I'm an athlete, all doors are open and anything. I'm like, no, because I'm looked at the same person being black. And the only thing is, all right, whoever sees me, if it's the police, I can get stopped, right? And that's the thing that I was trying to tell people is like, that is the difference. If I wake up and go to work, I don't know if I can make it home. If you wake up and go to work, you know you can get home. I'm like, right there's the difference. Because if the police stop me, I don't know what can happen. And we've seen it time after time. And it's not as much in the US, but it has happened in Canada as well. You know? So how can we make society understand that there's there's not only that white privilege. Like people need to educate, people need to understand how we feel, because I kind of feel like we understand how they look at us, but they don't see it the other way around, because it must happen a change. But when will the change happen? And some people are afraid of change. That's my take on it. Like people feel like a change is something bad, but change is something very good.
Yeah, change can be difficult because we perceive it as change is something that you a lot of times we perceive it as when you change is because you have to take away something.
Yeah,
While change is more of an evolution.
exactly.
You progress into learning and to educating yourself and to realizing yes, there's a lot of the great thing I love now in Montreal is you see a lot of exposure of black entrepreneurs, and then you realize, wow, wait, they do this, they do that, they do this, and I was not aware. And now that it's put out there, then you realize that there's different departments, and that yeah, we can be good at many things, and it's putting it out there. And I like people to understand that because I feel sometimes because black people are now maybe being less in the dark and trying to be more going forward and more proactive.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's like we're not trying to step over and being over dominant. Is just
No.
saying let our shine, let our light shine, because we are also able to do good things, and maybe sometimes those things were put down and you never really noticed it because it was not put at the forefront for you to see and to know, and now to realize that I have to judge somebody because of what their content, their character, and not just because we have been conditioned or put on TV, visualized uh, hoods, gangs, and then so you now you're conditioned to see a somebody or a person of a color in already in a certain mind frame. He's either an athlete or he's that. No, we don't do that when we meet other people. So now can we open the scope of how you
Yeah.
perceive somebody, which is they can be a brilliant mind, they can be an entrepreneur, they can be a coach, they can be a politician, they can be many other things, and that's what we are trying to put at the forefront, so that uh, we uh, we take away, or I would say take away the layers. We let people see the many layers
Yes,
that can be done.
no, I mean, like for 8 years, we had America had a black president. There's even a dollar bill in Canada, the $10 bill of a black woman on it. And when I did my research, I'm like, wow, I didn't even know that we even have black women represented in politics, and it's good. And I think for me, Canada being a country of diverse, do you think that they can also take a clear role, given that the society in Canada may be more open than some other places, like in the States, like in Norway, where you see now the different ethnicity, people are mingling together. I also feel, and that's what I said, that Norway and Canada for me are a great representation of two countries that can actually take charge in leading the process of racism in society, because that's what it is. There's no racism in sport, but it's the society that brings it in.
Yeah, look, Canada, there's a lot of diversity. And the great thing is you can, I think in Canada, most people will say, I'm Canadian, but I have this background.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes other places people will say, I'm this first, and then I'm
Yeah.
and here few people feel like, if you go to Toronto, Montreal, they'll tell you I'm a Montrealer. But yeah, I have Haitian descent, or I have Italian descent. So you kind of able to mix both without necessarily having to choose or say that you are exactly this or not that. So that's the beauty of, I guess, in Canada, where we seem to be a country where, yeah, when people say Canadian, you think about openness, about places where people have a good quality life, and uh, and that, yeah, diversity, and hopefully doesn't mean that racism does not
Doesn't
exist.
happen
It's not.
exactly.
We cannot say that it doesn't exist, but I would say it's maybe not as amplified as other places, maybe like our neighbors in the south, where it's quite evident that
Yeah.
this it's there. It's maybe now it's even more present because of what happened in the last year.
Mhm.
But no, in Canada, the diversity which I like is because, yeah, being from Montreal, the beauty of it is my friends. When I look at my childhood friends, they all from different places, either from born here, raised, from different ethnicities, and we feel that we're a part of Montreal. And that was the beauty of me growing up, is my friends are from different backgrounds, and when we went to their household, it was learning something new, and
Yeah.
made me grow up and develop with a much more open mindedness when I
Yes.
see somebody, because I understand it. I have friends from these different backgrounds.
Mhm.
So it's the beauty of, I would say, being in Canada, at least in the parts of it where you feel that you are, yeah, more welcome, if you could say.
How how different was it for you? Because this is what I'd also try to tell people. I lived in Europe, right? For me, Europe, when you talk about being black and the way that you portrayed and looked at, it was more of a mental, emotional racism, emotional the way that people were with you because they will see you, but they will not actually tell you, but you could sense and feel it. Can you explain you as a Canadian that had to leave your country to go make a career overseas because you didn't have what the young players have right now, which is the CPL, right? A league where they can grow into and make it big. How was it for you going through those mental battles, being black, but also being Canadian when nobody looked at Canadian footballers?
Yeah, it wasn't easy because when you were leaving Canada, as I said before, we are known for hockey. If it was going to Norway to play hockey, you say Canadian, the doors are wide open because we're considered the best. We are kind of like Brazil, Argentina for soccer. You say the name, you say Canada, but in hockey, in soccer, the difference is we're very low in the pile of passports. Like I mentioned, there's Brazil, Argentina, France, all these countries way before. So you had to already prove that you were worth just the quality of the player you are, because Canadian it doesn't really, it's not as glamorous. And actually, the funny thing is, I left Canada, and I never felt seen racism in terms of playing soccer in Canada. But when I went to Norway, now I realize, ooh, that's where the first time I realized I'm a black player, because moments happened where there was monkey sounds when you come and go get the ball or do a corner, and then leaving home. It was. I'm happy that there's CPL because now players can find a way when they're young to keep growing, progressing the league. Yes, there's MLS, but there's CPL. Now you had to leave and I would say go into a world that you don't quite know, and you had to fend for yourself, discover new, discover yourself as an athlete, but also as a person, because there was no Google Translate in 2003, so I couldn't understand Norwegian when I got there. Okay,
Man, I remember playing against you in Tromsø. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, why would a black man go to Tromsø to play football?
yeah,
Is it
exactly.
does it
So
know that is it just down south? Oslo is where we all are.
yeah, exactly. So it's funny because I ended up going to Norway, which is another northern country, but then I ended up going all the way to the north, where there's even more snow. It's crazy, but it was a great time. But it was coming out of my comfort zone because I grew up in Canada, but I was always around my friends and family. And now going to Norway, I was by myself. I had to learn to cook. I had to take care of myself, start learning a new language, a new culture, and new ways of being, and then also living through the battles of when it's not going well. Yes, you can't go see your mom or your parents and go say, and then they say you're the best and everything. No, you're at home, you're in your apartment, and you're wondering if you are doing the right thing. You could be living with your friends, your family, going out with your friends, but no, you're struggling. You're wondering if you've made the right choice, how to build yourself back up for the next day of training, to prove yourself, to show that you're here for a reason, to battle that you are a Canadian player, a black player, and so there was a lot of moments. It went well, so I did well for myself there. But there's some moments where you have to see you have to be in front of the mirror because, like I said, there's no friends, no family, and your parents can't take one car, or your best friend can't come and pick you up. People were thousands of kilometers away, but it made me the person I am, more resilient towards adversity now. I think in life I take things a lot more lightly because I've lived them through sports.
Yeah,
I,
100%.
I, I've gone through the battles, but yeah, because there was no CPL, so you had to make your way there in Norway, and then I made my way in Norway. I was in second division, ended up going to first division, was sold to a first team. It was the first time that I was being sold or
Yeah,
transferred. So because in North America we do trades,
yeah.
while in the rest of football is there's a value
Market value.
for who you are, and then suddenly a team says, "Hey, you're worth $100,000." What? I'm not paid this amount of money. So how come? And
sure
then
you were that.
yeah, and then years later, Besiktas comes in and puts $2 million and say, "Hey, I'm not paid $2 million. How come I'm worth $2 million?" So there's a lot of things that I had to learn, not just living in the sport, but it was also the soccer culture, because transfers is something that is not, like say, common in North American sports. And while when you come to soccer, suddenly you have a value. Suddenly other teams are coming in, agents, and all that, all that part. So I had to grow up fast, because if you don't,
People take
struggles,
advantage of it.
you end up going back home very quickly. So
100%.
so it was a great experience being able to be in those countries.
Katie, I think we do have some couple of questions, do we?
Yeah, we do. So the first one, it says, "Hi, Mr. Kah and Mr. Bernier. As athletes and soccer players of color, what advice would you give to players of color who are consistently the subject of racist abuse? And what advice would you give to their white teammates and people who admire them to be allies alongside them?"
If I can answer that, I will say the great thing that I lived through the hockey period was I had the coach who helped me out. He explained to me, told me one thing, and I hope this is an advice that I'm passing along from him. He told me, first and foremost, if you're doing something well, people will try to intimidate you so that you don't perform well. So, and your skin color is something easily to be able to be pinpointed. So, if you perform, is the best way to respond, uh, and then let the distractions block them out. And after that, yeah, he what he did for me is he told my teammates that they were, as we are in one team, we are like brothers, and there is no colored skin. We are one team. We're a group, and so what happens to one of us is like it happens to all of us. So we have to be able to bond and to help each other. So my teammates, when you're attacked because of your color, you tend to be irritated, frustrated, even tend to want to be aggressive, because
Oh yeah.
people
Well,
are
that's how.
attacking you, and emotionally it's normal. You're charged with something that you go, "Hey, I don't like to be called that name," but my teammates were there to help me out, and they helped me out be able to manage my emotions better and to concentrate on my game, and to have teammates that I know were like brothers and had my back. And so I would say the best thing is to create a bond, and so that your teammates, your brothers, are there to help you. And also, you have bad moments. I don't know for you, Pa, but I had moments where I had to be at home and I go, I don't understand why they had to say
Oh
these
yeah.
words.
No,
Then you
100%.
have teammates, good teammates that are like, "Hey, you're just like us. You're a
Hmm.
soccer player, or you're a hockey player, or you're whatever, and we're with you." And those words go a long way, because then you understand that those put those people aside and stay with the people that have confidence in you, and that you have trust in, and that believe in you, and don't see you as a person of color, see you as a person of content.
100%. Now, I mean, for me, just to touch up on that little point, I remember my dad, and he told me, like, "You black, don't ever forget that." So that means that whatever you're doing, you have to do it 200%. Because if you do it 100% and there's another white guy in there, they won't give him the job. So make sure that whatever you do, you stand out, but be respectful. But if people are calling you names and stuff like that, same to Patrice, is because they want to take you out of what you're doing good. That means that you got to stay resilient. You got to stay focused on the task of the job. But I think now the biggest thing would be, with all the technology and everything, we have education. Like
Mm.
if we can educate people and make them understand that there's no difference in me. I'm just born black. That's it. There's nothing else different in me. I can find a friend who is white because we share the same similarities in way of life and thinking and doing. So for the young generation, it's like, take notice of what people are doing. Don't feel afraid to talk about it. Sometimes it's hurt because it's like Patrice says. Sometimes you feel like you're the victim. You feel like you cannot say something because other people are looking at you like, "Oh, yeah, it's not a big deal." But that task as a player and as a person, it goes on your mental health. Now you're thinking
Mm.
of things like, do I even feel worthy of living? But I always say education Education and understanding is the key. Because once people also get out of their fear of seeing somebody, not their skin, but to Patrice's point, his name. His name is Patrice Bernier. His name is not the black man, Patrice Bernier. So his name is Patrice. So can we look at people as who they are, accept also what they are? Education, understanding, and acceptation for me is the way to go about it. So don't stop, keep fighting, because those will open step by step.
Patrice, this one is for you. You talked about how you played in hockey and how hockey was prominent in Montreal when you first came. So the question is, you mentioned Pele as one of your soccer inspirations. Who was your hockey role model as a youth, if you had one?
Hockey role model? I had a lot of hockey role models, but I love the little player that was actually a Swedish player called Mats Naslund. But back then also the thing was, as I mentioned, there wasn't that many black players. So Grant Fuhr, who played for the Edmonton Oilers, was a black player playing goals. So I went back home and put a baseball glove and pretended to be a goalie. So he was somebody that I looked up. And then there was some local players from Montreal that ended up going to the NHL, like Reginald Savage and Claude Villegrain, who were Haitians also. So I told myself, as much as I love Wayne Gretzky or Mario Lemieux, these guys, I look at them, I said, there's not many of us, but they've made it. So maybe now I can push a little bit further and hopefully one day go to the NHL. Like I said, soccer I had Pele and there's so many others. But those are the hockey role models that I like. But one I really enjoyed was Bo Jackson. Maybe not many people know who he is, but he played American football and baseball. So it told me maybe I can play both sports and excel. And he was excelling in two sports. And if you know the citations from back then, it was Bo knows.
Bo knows.
So Bo Jackson.
What about prime time?
A model, yeah.
What about prime time?
Yes, Deion Sanders.
What about Deion Sanders, prime time?
But in hockey, yeah, I love Mats Naslund, who used to play for the Montreal Canadiens. I looked up to Wayne Gretzky and Mario Lemieux, but I also looked at Grant Fuhr, Claude Villegrain, and Reginald Savage because they looked like me and they were there. And so I told myself, as much as I like Wayne Gretzky, but I know Reginald Savage looks like me and there's not that many. So if he made it, then I can push a little bit more and see if I can make it also.
Right. Pa, I got one for you here. So as Patrice has mentioned that hockey was another sport he was able to play as a youth, were there other sports for you that you played or had a passion for growing up? Also looking forward to the upcoming PFC season, and thank you for taking the question.
I mean, I enjoy also skating because in Norway it was like as a youth, you did it. You did different sports. But for me, the only thing I liked about hockey when I was younger is you could go and fight. But that was the only thing that I played hockey for. I skied on the hockey just to be able to be an instigator on the pitch. But I truly enjoyed skiing. Alpine skiing was for me like my second sport that I truly enjoyed. And I was doing it all the way till for the first time I went to Holland and I signed contract. Because in Norway, Patrice will tell you, we do it in preseason. Like you will go as a team and you go ski, have a laugh and stuff like that. So in Holland, that's when you truly know, oh, now you're becoming super, super professional because I did it. And then the next day I got called into the office. They're like, hey, you're not allowed to ski. And for me, it looked weird because I'm like, I'm used to doing that in Norway. And then the coach goes, he's like, Pa, we are afraid because you went skiing in a place where you are the only black man. And it made me realize, I'm like, wow, and because you don't think of those stuff, but I was, but skiing is something I truly love. And now that I'm stopped playing, I cannot wait. I'm looking forward to have a good time. This year we couldn't because of COVID, but I'm looking forward to go skiing and spending time with my family. Because I know my wife also loves skiing. So.
And you're in a good area for alpine skiing, that's for sure.
Man, we're in the best area, man. That's what I say. I mean, for us, honestly, and for you also played with Rob and Josh, but also you came to Norway with Rob Moss. Could you touch upon a little bit because here are you a black man and a white man, both from Canada, ending up in the same team? Like, what did it do for the two of you, and how did that bond grow later on?
Yeah, because Rob, at the time, I think we had met at the Olympic team at the Francophone Games in Ottawa, so we knew each other a bit. But then I ended up going to Moss. He was already there for a few months before,
Yeah.
and so when they said there's another Canadian, you're like, okay, there's another Canadian, and then
Well, not a black one, huh?
yeah, no, and so, but we lived right next to each other. Our apartments were really two doors apart, and we spent every day, every day, not just training, but every other moment we were exchanging who cooks, who doesn't. We had a roommate that was a Norwegian, and we went through all the parts of learning about living in Norway, learning the Norwegian football. So we were there together, and then slowly, after a year, I left just before him. I was transferred to Tromsø, and I think a month later he was transferred to Molde. And yeah, we created bonds there. His family came over. My girlfriend would come over, and we got a lot tighter. Knew each other quite well, and yeah, exchanged a lot because as much as I said had bad moments, but he was there too. He was a forward. I was a midfielder. Team's winning. He's not playing as much, or I'm not playing. So you can't consistently just trying to motivate yourselves and keep yourselves in the direction of pushing. And then after that, later on, we met again in Germany. So playing in different towns. But yeah, in Moss it was great because yeah, I learned to drive stick because in Canada we drive automatic. So and so living in Norway, that's where I had to learn to drive stick. And with Rob, we spent every moment. Like I said, we discovered a lot of things about each other and create a bond. And now, yeah, like I said, we're still in contact. And that's why I said I know some of the people who are behind Pacific FC. And then Josh, we met in Germany, but Rob, and then I went to see him in Amsterdam when he was playing in the Heerenveen. So discovered Europe at the same time and made our careers about the same time. And we're on the national team a few times together. So those are the great things about football. Is he's from BC, I'm from Quebec, and then we ended up living together in Moss, and that's where the BC Quebec rivalry goes away. Now we're Canadian.
Yeah. We stick together. Now we're Canadian. Now you're right. No, but that's the crazy part that I also like that people understand. Like I had the similar story with Rob. Like we met in Norway, again met in Holland, and then in the MLS, and then now he's my owner and I'm working for him. I'm like, it's like the life cycle is so crazy, So that is the one part that I tell people all the time. I'm like, he didn't see me for the black man. He saw me who I was, right? And I saw him for who he was, and the respect was there. And now look, years later, he's trying to help develop football in Canada because, like yourself, they didn't have the opportunity to play in their own country. And now they're starting something that is great for the country that will be something that this generation and the next generation can live up, grow, and make this league strong. Strong that Canadians can be proud of and say, we have our own league, and they will always be associated with it.
Yeah, no, and you said great things is they were players and now they're owners. So, and talking about models, that's great because as much as we're in coaching, you need to see that people are giving back in football, not just in many other ways, and not many people would have jumped in and tried to be owners and build a club and make it progress. So I'm proud of Rob and Josh because you could see that they care about the game, not just playing it and making a career about it, but making it grow in Canada. And we need more and more people like that so that the sports establishes itself. I always tell people it's great to be good in one sport, but it'd be great to be very good in multiple sports. So we're great at hockey, but can we be great in soccer and all the other sports that Canada is also good at? But we could be great at it, but we need the investment and we need people to jump in. and to realize that this sport is fantastic, and that it's worldwide, and it, like you said, you connected through soccer from Holland, from Norway, and leads you back to being in Canada with people that we met across the Atlantic. So
Crazy, man. And that's
it,
what I said. My daughters are Canadian, and that's the one part I thought too. My daughters are Canadian. Like in no million world I could imagine as a black man going to BC, establishing my family with people that I've met along the way. Because sometimes it's just not. It's just a crazy story how it becomes a story, and then you're like, all right. So when people truly understand that what we saying regarding the Black History Month and how we feel as people, it's like we just want to feel equal. We want people just to respect us for our values, respect us for who we are as person and the things that we do. And the things that we do is not being just put on a box. We are more than just being on a box. We want to grow and show people that we are capable of doing all the things that people thought that we were not. You know?
yeah, no, that's very true. I will always remember one thing that disturbed me when I was a player, is because when they talk about black players in soccer, at least in the past,
Mhm.
it was always about predominant athletic characteristics. But you could never say, you never heard somebody say, "Oh, he's a brilliant player, great football IQ." You would always hear very strong, very fast, powerful, and that's something that always bothered me, because people didn't see. You would see two players and doing about the same things, but one would be mentioned about his physical attributes, and the other one would be talked about his IQ and his
IQ.
qualities of vision and his understanding of the game intelligence. Well,
Mhm.
and that's something that it bothered me, and I'm quite proud when people say they liked how I played because of game intelligence, not just the other physical attributes that we always were known for or we mentioned about.
Yeah. Oh, Patrice, here's a question for you. I think this.
Yeah, gentlemen, quick question before we wrap up. So in both your travels, who is the toughest opponent you have played against and why?
Toughest player I've played against is Deco from used to play for FC Barcelona. We played Portugal with the national team, and he was at the prime of his career playing with Ronaldinho, and he was just one step, two steps in advance every time. Everything I tried to do to get the ball away or try to anticipate what he could do, it just seemed easy. It just seemed like the game slowed down for him, and so playing against Deco against Portugal was the best player I've played against. I've played many players, but definitely the most difficult, because, like I said, I love more the IQ. What can somebody do, and not just the physical attributes. And Deco was a fantastic player to play against, and I could say I'm proud because he played with a club that I love, FC Barcelona. So it was great to be able to say I played against him also.
I mean, Patrice played midfield. For me, I was a defender, so there was a lot of battle with some strikers. But the one, honestly, I would say that was the trickiest one to play with, because you never know, was Luis Suarez.
Luis Suarez, yeah, it's true. You played against him when he was in Holland, no?
Yeah, I played against Luis Suarez. I played against Zlatan. It's like you just don't know. With Luis Suarez, it was so tricky because he did everything in his power to win. Right. So, and sometimes those players are very tricky. But yeah, I was fortunate enough in my time to play with a lot of great players. But it would be.
You're lucky also he didn't bite your ear.
Yeah. Bro, I would have bitten him myself, to be honest, if he went there. You know how it
You
is.
would have been shocked. Oh,
No, but I mean, I've really had the pleasure to play against a lot of practice, so it would be difficult. But yeah, he was the one that was. You just didn't know what he's gonna do. Like he had that one dribble that he will kick it to you, and then somehow, some way, the ball is perfectly for him, and he can score. So it was one of those things when he was growing up. But yeah, unfortunately, you can say that you played with some. So
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us today. Patrice, thank you, thank you, thank you. Please stay tuned for the next episode of An Audience with Pa. Keep an eye out on our social media as well as the newsletters. And again, gentlemen, thank you so much for being here.
Patrice, legend, thank you very much for your time. Truly appreciate
Thanks,
it.
my pleasure, and keep it up. Very good, and hopefully one day I'll be able to come over there and watch your team play. But
When COVID-free, man, COVID-free.
yeah, definitely. But yeah, pleasure, great pleasure, and appreciate it, and keep up the good work.
Thank you. You too, brother. We keep in touch. Yeah.
Definitely.
Thank you. Bye-bye.